Hi, welcome everyone. Welcome to the Reporting Reset, the S/4HANA Public Cloud session for analytics. We're just going to give another minute here for last few folks to join, and we'll get started. Big crowd today, close to 30 people here. Okay, it's 10:02, so let's get started. So again, welcome everybody to the session. This is the first session of VistaVu Analytics Week, where we're going through a basic overview of the reporting capabilities of SAP's flagship ERP products, starting with S/4HANA Public Cloud this week. So I guess next slide, please, Sonia. We'll introduce the speakers for today. So my name is Ami Burns. I'm a strategic account manager here at VistaVu, having worked here since 2018 with a variety of customers on the existing side. And we also have Alex Waddell, S4HANA Solutions Engineer, and Wenling Zhang, also S4HANA Solutions Engineer, to showcase some of the reporting capabilities here for you on S4 Public. Next slide, please. So quickly, just running through the agenda, we'll start with talking about some of the common pain points that we've heard that folks on this call have with S4. We'll give an overview of the four core report layouts that the Alex and Wenling will be going through. And then we'll switch over to the demo where Alex will showcase the pivot table, data table, and booklet-style report layouts, and Wenling will finish off with the dashboards. We will have a pause in between the demo sessions for a Q&A, just so you can bring up your questions as they're fresh in your mind. And then finally, we'll open up for general Q&A at the very end before we finish off the session for today. Next slide, please. All right, so why are we here today? We heard from everybody on this call through some of the surveys we've been running over the past while, with respect to the pain points that you feel around the topic of reporting. So reporting, it often feels hard to use. It's difficult to scale as your data volume grows over time. The options are very complex and they often include more than what's needed. So when you're looking at the screen, there's a lot of fields. You're not sure which ones are actually relevant to you specifically or how to pare them down. It's unclear what's standard in the system versus what actually requires further configuration or advanced analytics tools to achieve. And finally, there's uncertainty around exactly what SAP Cloud ERP, which is SAP's new name for S/4HANA Public Cloud, what type of reporting it can and cannot do natively. So, and what's interesting is over the course of several customer conversations or surveys, we've heard reporting as being the top pain point across your ERP use. And so we're here at least today to introduce some of those layouts and hopefully address some of the lack of clarity there is around the native capabilities. So next slide, please. So I wanted to start off by talking a little bit about the four core layouts and what they're really for. So the first one being the pivot table. It's best used for analytical exploration and multidimensional analysis. So the key question answered here, how does this look with different dimensions? Typical folks who may use this type of table layout would be FP&A, finance leadership, business analysts, department heads. Maybe common examples of some of these reports would look something like P&L by cost center and month, revenue by customer and product group, margin analysis by region, or cost variance by account and period. So when it's the right choice, it's most likely when the user's trying to figure out what the story is, the pivot tables will allow you the flexibility to then discover that. The next one, basic data table, best used for when you're trying to verify, reconcile, and find operational detail. So the key question answered through this layout type, what exactly is in this number? So typical personas that might utilize this type of layout: finance analysts, controllers, operations or billing teams, or auditors and compliance stakeholders. Common examples of reports in this type of layout would be journal entry line item, sales order or invoice list, open APAR, and finally inventory batch level details. When it's the right choice is when you have the question of, if the question is what exactly makes up this number, then the raw data table is the right type of layout to take a look at. Next, we have our booklet style. This is a fairly new layout style that was introduced into S4 Public over the past year. It's best used for guided review and structured business storytelling. So the key question answered with this layout type: how do we walk through this business area? Typical persona that might use this: a CFO, or other types of finance leadership, executive committees, group controllers, strategy or transformation teams. And some common examples of booklet style reports could look like month-end financial review, group financial statements, management review packs, and cash flow or working capital reviews. It's the right choice when the goal is to run the same conversation every month with the same structure. The booklet is ideal for telling the narrative and the story in a consistent manner. Last but not least, we have our dashboard style. It's best for monitoring, awareness, decision enablement. The key question answered through this dashboard: quick view of, are we on track right now? So typical personas might be your executives, your department heads, and operations managers who just really quickly want to see where things are at this exact moment in time. Common examples might include an executive KPI overview, sales performance dashboard, procurement or inventory health, finally finance close status. So if someone asks you the question of, are we on track? The answer should come from this dashboard layout table. So that concludes my overview of the 4 layouts. With that, I will turn it over to Alex to run through 3 of the layouts we have in store for you today.
Hey, welcome everyone. So yeah, our objective out of this session is really for you to just get an understanding of the flavors of the reports. We can spend quite a bit of time training you on reports down the road, but today we're just going to kind of give you a bit of a teaser. So as far as those styles, we are the ones that kind of designated these titles. SAP doesn't really differentiate between types of reports. Each report, you just find it based on the name of the report. But we've grouped them together because they clearly kind of operate in these different silos. So the pivot table one, and I am going to be showing you this in the system, so just a couple slides here to help you understand those differences. The pivot table one is the one that allows you to really pull data easily across columns and rows. And so the reason we're calling it a pivot table is because that's what it resembles. If you're used to using Excel pivot tables, you'll have no problem using these kind of reports. So they all look the same. It doesn't matter whether you're running a trial balance, like we have a screenshot here, or if you're running a job profitability report or a journal entry analyzer. All of those reports could be very different users, but they will have a similar experience. They will have the filters across the top. They'll have the navigation panel on the left. And then that area on the lower or in the right is kind of the report building area. So all of these are really good, like Ami said, for doing kind of an analytical data. And sort of this would probably maybe be your first place to go at month end, or for management to go to kind of understand data at a high level. And it already has a lot of complex join data in it. So it's very difficult, or sorry, it's very easy to build these. You don't have to write difficult queries or anything like that. And yeah, so if there's any limitations in this report, I mean, public cloud really does handle large data retrievals very well by simply kind of having a scroll down button. So you'll kind of rarely run into situations where you have problems, but sometimes if you do drag something like, you know, invoice number into the column, you might inadvertently create a report that's going to have thousands of columns on it. So easy to correct that kind of situation, but that's just something you have to kind of watch out for. So then our next style is going to be something that we just, once again, we've named this. So we just think this is also kind of like the Excel table. So not a pivot table, but if you're used to using Excel, especially nowadays, modern Excel kind of wants you to put data into a table format. And as soon as you designate something's in a table format, it's got headers, but it doesn't really have row data as in the row aggregation. So it's not pivoty data like that. So you can do subtotaling like we have here, but that's about it. So you can't get into really complicated cross pivots here. However, these reports access massive data sets like the Universal Journal table. So Public Cloud has an enormous table for every journal entry that's already linking all sorts of subledger data into every journal entry. So it does allow you to access through that cogwheel all sorts of hidden fields. And so this is a really great report for doing robust reporting on detailed levels. So if you're the person that has to reconcile those accounts or understand what the detail is inside your manufacturing or your product builds, this is probably the style of report that you would go to. So once again, what you can't do on this report, you can't pivot data, you can't use hierarchies. And anytime you create sort of custom reports, which we're not going to talk about a lot in this session, that is sort of another option to do report building. Those outputted datas are always in the pivot table design, not in this Excel basic table design. And then the last one that I'll be speaking to you about, the last layout, is a newish style. We're still using the word new. I think it's probably been out for over a year. Some of you may have already stumbled across this for our public cloud customers, is the booklet style. This hasn't been rolled out broadly across every work stream yet, but it is, I see more of these reports showing up with every release. And these are definitely the most robust, so they have the most complexity. These are the reports that really give you a lot of strength around pre-built data sets that already have a lot of intelligent grouping and subtotaling built into it. This one has a lot of flexibility for letting you build your own formulas. That's a little bit harder to do in the other two layouts. And this one has more of that financial kind of final presentation feel to it. So simple things like being able to say, I want to show my units in thousands of dollars, right? So you can kind of get sort of board ready presentation type reporting out of these booklets. But once again, they're not available everywhere. They're a little bit hard. They're probably the hardest ones to learn, but I'm going to show it to you and you'll see it's not unmanageable at all. And those are, once again, they're kind of just appearing as we go through. So I'll show you what's sort of in the system today. And I think with that, we can probably dive in and kind of tour you around. All right, so let me share my screen. For today's demo, I am going to be flipping into a couple different systems. I also encourage you, if you have questions, we're trying to monitor the Q&A panel. So I'm just gonna make sure that's active right now, or one of my colleagues will let me know. So if you have questions as we go, feel free to drop them in or wait till the end, it's up to you. So I wanted to start with that Excel table because that's likely the easiest one. So an example of those reports, don't worry about how I'm getting to the reports. I'm not trying to train you on where the reports are. There's lots of different ways to get to reports in the system. You can have a shortcut icon, like I have a million of them on my screen. I'm a busy user. I can search for reports. The reason I wanted to search for these reports is I just wanted to illustrate that from a financial accounting user. And once again, this is just one bank of reports that use this format, but probably the one that accountants use the most are these reports called display line items. Every single one of these reports are built off the same data set. The only difference is SAP has kind of prepared for you different filter headers. So even if you kind of run the wrong one here, you can probably convert it because you can customize or change the report style so much. So when we launch into the report and I talk about that design header, that's this filter panel across the top. And so while filter panels are available in both the pivot table style and just the standard table style, this one does not have that navigation pane, meaning that you can't really control how data pivots between rows and columns. Now, for this report, you've got your filtration, These are the out-of-the-box ones. Once again, the system has already determined what filters it thinks you need based on the fact that you ran the margin analysis version. If you'd run the version that was about production costing, once again, same data set, but you would have some fields up here that maybe relate to product or production order, things like that. But you'll notice when I go to my adapt filters, I can literally go to one of hundreds of other fields to do filtration on. So any field that I want to add to this report, so if I did want something like my product added to this report, and sorry, added as in filterable, so that I can now do a search on a specific product, that's very easy for me to do. Now you'll also notice when I come into this report, there's a drop down here at the left. And so I have already made a decision ahead of this training session that I like this report to run with some additional fields. When this report shows up out of the box from SAP, they have a view called standard, and that's the way the report typically runs. So it's kind of up to you to build these filters and save them. And when you do save them, that is something that you can also decide to share with other users. You can decide to make it a default the way I did. So that's completely up to you, and that kind of gives you the power to not have to rebuild things every single time you come up here once you've built a report in a robust way. So let's just run this data wide open. So I'm even going to change my posting date parameter. You'll see a lot of the reports around dates have very dynamic filters. So while I could put in specific dates, I could put in specific from to dates. I can also do things like put in a dynamic date, which I'm going to actually choose last year. That's a little bit unusual, but my demo environment probably has more data last year. So I'm going to hit go, and this report is telling me there's 6,485 rows of data. And then what do I have in this data? Once again, just like the filters, the actual results are predetermined by SAP. But in the case of you perhaps wanting to modify this, you have that ability by just clicking on the cogwheel. And in this particular report, all the magic happens inside the cogwheel. So when I go to this report, I can immediately start to turn off information that I don't want. So maybe I don't really want to see debits and credits. Maybe I just want to see my total amount. Maybe I'd like to know what other amount fields are available. So I just type in the word amount here, and I can see that I have the ability to also add amount in global currency. So that's kind of useful since I clearly have a bunch of legal entities pulled into this report. So if I make a change like that, you hit the OK, and now I've got a different flavor of this report. Now when this renders, you're going to see my global currency is way over here on the end, so I can click my cogwheel again. And it's very easy to just take these. You can click and drag. You can use these little arrow buttons to move things around like that. And then if there's data that you don't want to see, you can obviously turn it on. You can add whatever you want. So you can see, just like the filters, 368 available fields. That is a massive amount of predetermined data that's already existing in the universal table or is joined through already predefined query that SAP has built in order to give you this much power. So I think you'll notice, especially if you're a B1 user or even a by design user, the nature of the pre-built queries in public cloud is very powerful. It means that you don't have to have a lot of technical skills. You don't have to know how to use SQL or anything like that. Typically, I would say most of our customers get like 80 or 90% of their reporting needs without doing anything custom, just by learning how to remove and add fields to a report. It's really that simple. So if I click any one of those fields, it's going to move it around. So you're going to see I've now got my global and company code beside themselves. And then the last thing I'll show you about this cogwheel that's really powerful. The sorting, of course, is powerful. That's kind of a no-brainer. You can do filters, but you can also do filters up at the top. So that's a little bit redundant. But the group by is also very powerful. So if we want to take something like our WBS element, so that's our project code, and we want to add that as a grouping element on this report, then that drastically changes the way this report looks. So now you can see we've got a little expanding icon that's showing us our total journal entries based on every single project code and a subtotal. So that's a very powerful way to get to your data. Now you'll also notice in this field, when it comes to drill down capability, anywhere that you've got a blue hyperlink, that's where you can drill down on. So I can drill into the journal entry, I can drill into the company code, that's not that useful. Some other fields like, well, GL account even could be useful if you want to kind of turn this into a different report that's maybe more about the GL account rather than the way you've got it structured here. That's pretty easy to pivot. It's going to open up another panel over this, and then you can just use the back button to get back here. So that's the drill down capabilities. And that's kind of really a high level gist of how you use these table reports. So once again, this is definitely your go-to first place report if you're trying to understand what is the detail that's making up whatever it is I'm looking for in the system. And just a note that these reports are pre-designed in that you can't decide to see this data necessarily in one of the other formats. So the formats are already predefined with the data sets to them. So you kind of over time will just learn which reports have the data you need, and you'll certainly learn very quickly which reports are a pivot report versus which are just a raw table dump report like this. And I've got a couple other tabs open, so I just wanted to show you really quickly some kind of other variations of this. So this is a report called supplier invoice list. You wouldn't actually think of this as a report in the same way as I just ran this one called display line items, which is all my journal detail. A supplier invoice list is really more of an application that you would use to potentially create a new invoice or click on an existing invoice and get to that invoice. But oftentimes these applications that are sort of data entry points that are showing you data have that cogwheel, and they also behave the same way as that Excel table. So you can see I can come in here, and if this is, if I'm an AP user and I use this report all the time to go in and inquire on invoices, I can structure this to look however I want. So maybe I want the invoice approver, maybe I want to know who entered the invoice. Those are fields I could very easily add to this report. And if you do get kind of in this overflow situation, you can zoom out on your screen to get more data in. I don't really like to do that during the webinar. This is probably already getting pretty small. If you click on these two icons, that kind of moves you back and forth, but then you might have some data kind of flowing off the screen that you've asked to see. And then once again, that group by is also here. So for example, if I did want maybe this report to show my invoicing party as summary data, that's a very drastic change to the way the standard is, but there's no problem with doing that. You can see there's a bunch of draft invoices in here that don't actually have an invoicing party. But then if I scroll down, you can see these are all my invoices for Robert Half, all my invoices for domestic US supplier. Maybe as the AP manager, this is the way I really like to see this data when I land here. So I'm going to save this, and I'm going to just make this, my standard view. I set this as a default. If I like, I could make it available to somebody else. And do I want the data to automatically be served based on the way that I ran this? Then I can just say apply automatically. And so that becomes the new way that I'm going to see this screen every time I launch the supplier invoice list. And just illustrate one other little example here. So this is also a display line items in general ledger report. So same foundation as the other one. In this one here, I'm running this report that's kind of driven more around the status of journal entries, whether they're open or closed, as in whether or not they're cleared. And just to show you kind of fancy things you can do, I created this report to help me automatically reconcile my prepaids. So by combining my filter list with my grouping list, this could be a standard way that I want to run the report. So this report is helping me kind of auto reconcile my prepaid. So it's looking at everything in this one GL account as of a certain key date. And if you expand, for example, here on my monthly insurance, I've built this report in such a way to combine my original prepaid invoice, which for insurance for a year for $13.20, and then I'm combining that so it all sums together with my monthly prepaid accruals. And you can see that this particular prepaid, although my dates are kind of old, there's still $440 left on this insurance that has to be, amortized out. And I can clearly see all my journal entries. So a very dynamic way to build reports here that you could really just kind of take this. If you need to dump this into Excel, all of the reports have that Excel icon. It's all point in time dump to Excel. And now I have essentially my prepaids reconciled in an Excel spreadsheet, and I can send that off to whoever I need. Or I can even do things like actually send this report itself as an email or have a shortcut to it on my landing page. So all of that is the Excel tables. Let me just flip into another system. I don't see any questions yet, so I'm going to just keep on moving. Now we're going to look at the style that's more pivot table based. For this one, we're going to run the trial balance. So unlike our other report was journal level detail, this is more account level detail, GL account level detail. So things that will be similar with this report and the last one we looked at, the table report. Let's give it a moment to load here. And for this report, I did switch environments. I'm going into SAP's partner demo environment because I've got lots of journal entries in here. So it makes the report a bit more interesting. So we'll just give it a second to open up. Which of course was very fast 10 minutes ago before you all got here. Okay, I think this is going to work. Sometimes it logs me out. I should have started in this environment, but I think we're good. All right. So much like the other report, the filter panel, that's kind of universal. So you get that across the top. Like the other report, you have the adapt filters. So for example, if I want to add GL account to this report as a field that I potentially will want to filter on, that's very easy to do. Now, when I run these reports, I typically focus on my filters first, unless I've got predefined kind of bookmarked filters set up. I'm going to run 3 companies here. We'll just run this for these few weeks in April, see how this looks. Okay, so now we're getting data that is more pivot table looking. So we've got kind of columns and row aggregation. And so where data is common, like our company code, that's a great big sort of conjoined field. And as we scroll down, we can see here that we have all of our companies stacked one on top. So we move from the UK to Germany and then into the US. So the first thing I might want to do on this report is really clean up the measures. So where my columns and rows intersect, those are called measures. Those are typically going to be dollars. In almost every report, sometimes the report, it might be some sort of value if you're using statistical key figures or things like that. And maybe to make this report a little easier to read, let's just look at ending balances. And similar to that other report that was multi-currency, maybe rather than looking at company code currency, so I don't have British pounds and US dollars kind of stacked on top of each other, I could actually also grab my ending balance in global currency, and we could see what that looks like. So as soon as I add a measure, it's always column-based data. That's why you're working with measures under columns. And now we're going to see everything is translated into US dollars. So if that's the case, maybe I'll just get rid of my company code currency. So just use the plus or minus to toggle those off and on. And now to make this report a little bit more interesting, let's take our company code and drag it to the columns. Alternatively, I could hit this little icon here that got the horizontal and your vertical lines. So one means rows, one means columns. Now my company codes are in my columns. So much easier to read much easier to analyze report, to do comparative financials. And in this way, this is not something I could have done in that first format I've shown you. So this pivot complexity is quite powerful. Now, depending on the report you're running, I'm just kind of scrolling slowly through here. Trial balance, once again, joined on slightly different data because it's more GL level data. So a little more difficult to get down to the very transactions that are going into this report. This same pivot report run on, let's say, project accounting will obviously have very different available fields. And sometimes they're fairly limited. Sometimes you'll go to run a report and maybe that particular data structure only has a dozen. The trial balance actually happens to have a lot of data pre-built into it. So if we were to grab something else, like let's say Profit Center, and add it to this report, I'm going to add that to the columns because that probably makes the most sense. And now you can see we've got a lot of profit centers. So I mentioned earlier, this is where you want to be cautious. If you're bringing in data here that's very expansive, you can suddenly build a report that's going to grow across many hundreds or even thousands of columns. And so now you potentially want to think about using filters to limit your data, or does this data really belong in the columns? So those are the things you'll want to think about. So there are multiple ways to filter. You can actually get into some filtration right inside your working grid here, but for filtering, I typically recommend working up here. And so let's see all of the different profit centers that are available. I can search for the ones that I want. I've got 359 of them, so that's a lot. I'm just going to scroll down. I can't remember the exact name, so I just want to find a couple here for our analysis. So just look at consulting unit A and B as an example. That should really limit our data. And let's hit the go button. So filtering data, adding data, all very easy. Clicks of mouse. You don't have to know about how to join tables. You don't have to write queries. You don't have to know about inner joins and outer joins and things like that. Now, when I start analyzing the data, I can see some interesting things like consulting unit A exists in both the US, right? It's under company 1710, and consulting unit A also exists in Germany. So profit centers happens to be a dimension in public cloud that is shared across legal entities. That's actually a really powerful feature, not what this webinar is about, but I'm going to take this profit center and now put it above the company code. So now this is a much different look. So now I'm seeing essentially how my consulting unit A is doing. So this number here, my $164,000, represents two different legal entities. And I'm able to consolidate common profit centers across multiple companies. And you can see here that consulting unit B only exists in the US company. And in fact, our UK company is no longer on this report because that company doesn't involve those profit centers. So by virtue of eliminating the profit centers they belong into, I've actually eliminated an entire company off this report. So understanding your data is very important here, but understanding how to do complicated report writing is not really a problem in public cloud. This is just, really powerful feature. So to kind of bring us home, I want to show you that last report. I think I've just got maybe another 5 minutes or so, and I want to get into the booklet reporting. I don't see any questions yet. Maybe I will answer a question that I get often is people will ask me if every one of these fields have data. And the answer to that is likely no. So for example, if you do not have joint venture accounting implemented in your organization, adding the joint venture information is just going to add blank fields into the system.
Alex, we got one question there from the audience.
Okay.
If you're good right now?
Sure. Yep.
Okay.
Hey, Alex, we're just kind of implementing SAP right now, so we're just kind of high level on this. So when we're looking at this report here on the trial balance, is there a way to drill down into the information, and find out all the details that make up these balances?
Yeah, there is. So when all else fails, you can typically take a particular field and you can look for to see if there is a way to do a drill down. So sometimes it's available and sometimes it's not. It's not always possible. I would say eventually what you just kind of learn is to know what report to go to help you with drill down capabilities. And it's funny you asked that because I happen to have the income statement open. So the income statement is actually a bit of a weird hybrid. It looks a little bit more like that Excel table, but on the income statement, you see you have all these blue hyperlinks. So if I were to drill down on my cost of goods, it gives me two different reports. So literally that same report that I started this session on, display line and in the general ledger, I can click on that and it's going to launch that report and it's going to automatically filter in the header for the same data that was in the trial balance so that I end up with the same dollar amount. So to answer your question, yeah, drill down, very prevalent in the system, but not universal. And I would say the trial balance, not probably the best place to go for drill down.
Okay, yeah, no, I was playing around with it. Okay, so you kind of came to the same conclusion I did. That's good. Okay, thank you.
Okay, yeah. Is there another question from Max?
Actually, Alex, we have one question in the Q&A side from Jim. His question is, how would I share a report with another user? How about with an external viewer, like a customer?
So to share a report, so once you've kind of built your report, you'd want to give it a name. So I would call this maybe Profit Center Comparative. I could make this a group, meaning I could specify sort of a body of users that I want to share with. So that's restricting it a little bit. Or I want to make it public across all my public cloud users. And so as soon as I check that, it doesn't really matter because they will be eligible to see it. In order for them to see it, they have to come into the report and they have to click on this manage button. And then what they will see is any other report that's public. And so if they click on the star by that report now becomes available to them. So that's how you would share it inside your organization. If you want to share this with your customer, actually letting them into your system, that is possible to do. That's a bit of a more controlled thing that would involve potentially a limited license of some sort. So usually the easiest way is to do an export to Excel. If you want to send this as an email or save it as a tile or copy the URL, or even these email options, what it's doing is it's taking this URL, and if you're sending it to someone outside your organization that doesn't actually have a license to this software, clicking that URL is not going to get them into this report. It's going to get them to a login screen and they'll get stuck there. So hopefully that gives you some clarity, but you always have this Excel export button. So you can literally do the Excel drop and then put that into an email for your customer. And so it's just kind of created this as Excel. And that's just popping open here on one of my other monitors. I'll show you that to you really quickly. And I think there was maybe an option there to limit showing but sometimes the parameters are nice. So you could delete those rows or hide them if you don't want to see it, but that's kind of the parameters running the report, and there's your data. So one thing to know about public cloud, a little different than by design, there is no live feed into the data structure, at least not with Excel. So these reports are just point in time. And the moment you do a journal entry, this report's no longer really, live data anymore or real data. All right, keeping an eye on the time, I'm just going to quickly show you the booklet and then we'll come back and see if we can address a few more questions if they come up. So for those booklet reports, these are the ones that I mentioned earlier are probably the most powerful. If you type in the word booklet in your search, if you already are a public cloud user, you can see what's available to you today. Now, obviously, some of these reports may not really work for you if you don't populate that kind of data. So in fact, in this report, cost center booklet, this environment doesn't have really good cost center journal entries, but this is sort of a fictitious manufacturing company. So I'm going to run the product profitability review. I am hoping more of these reports come to light. I'm sure they will as time goes by, because these are really the nicest kind of presentation ready reports in the system. A little bit more of a learning curve, but not overly difficult. My recommendation is just kind of dive in and start playing with it. So here, obviously, filters work exactly the same. So once you understand that concept, you can just kind of rock and roll, grab your data, filter this the way that you want. Now, when you get into these reports, what you'll see here is these have really nice, kind of easy to read. I'm going to just zoom in a little bit. I hope this is not too small for people. These are always a little harder to demo, but easier when you have a giant monitor at home, because you can kind of get a lot of real estate on the page. So when you look at a report like this, you'll notice that the panel is over here on the right and your report is over on the left. Across here, you've got some predefined sort of column row structures that come pre-delivered with these reports. So you can look at this report as a margin overview or a cost of goods breakdown. And then even within these, you might have some variability. So I can look at this period over period. And these can really drastically change the way these reports look. But you get into some really powerful dynamic report layouts. Now you can get into percentages. You know, you can build your own formulas in here as well. So this is something that the other two layouts don't really have that capability. So let's look at what some of those features are. So if we expand this panel over here on the right, we can get to our layout. You can kind of slide things over to give yourself more or less room as you need. But if we take something like, let's say, customer group, and we add this as a column on the report, once again, really changes the way this report looks. So now we're looking at something that's taking our various groups of products, and they're basing it against our different groups of customers and showing us profitability here. When we get into the formatting features here, this is a great feature that we've never had in the other reports, and now they have a scaling feature, so we can look at this in thousands of dollars. Do we want to see the format expressed as a default? Do you want to see the word thousands? So this really gets you to the point where you can start looking at this report in a way, or building a report that is something you would probably be wanting to export and show your customers or your shareholders. So decimal precision, all of that, how you want to show the signs, do you want negatives? So this is the kind of stuff that's a bit more Excel-based, lets you do it right inside SAP, gets you away from having to dump data in Excel and make it look pretty. You can really do it here. You can get into a lot of conditional formatting as well. So once again, if we had time to train you on this, the ability to build your own formulas, your own kind of smart coloring and filtration in the system, it's really powerful. And then once again, with these already predetermined breakdowns that you have here, a lot of times when you come into these reports, SAP has already kind of done a smart build on how they think this report might be meaningful for you, and you can kind of have a really good starting point in which to build upon. And the one last thing I'll mention is now they've also started integrating Joule, so the onboard AI in here. And I don't know if I've got any AI to run on this particular part. Let's check the margin overview. Sorry, I did test this morning and I can't remember which report layout I was looking at. I thought it was this one. Oh, here we go. So it might have been this view. So this particular view, this makes sense to the AI. So there's already some predetermined insights. Of course, you can ask it your own questions, but it's coming up with its own kind of insights into how you might want to analyze this data. So when you click on the AI, it's going to drill down, it's going to understand what the core data is that's making this up, and it's going to create an explanation for you based on that question that was asked. So it's kind of giving you a little report within a report, 5 products sold. It's giving you some information about what those groups are. And then it's giving you essentially what's happening with the data. So if you look at finished goods, the most significant impact from recognized revenue, which is increased by 156. So the AI starts to become useful here for you to do analytical questions like, why has profitability changed month over month, things like that. So we're seeing more and more of that built into these booklets as well. All right, I apologize. I'm probably stealing into Wenling's time, so maybe I'll stop now, pass this over to my colleague, and then I think we'll still have a chance for a few more questions at the end.
Yeah, so I just want to say, Max, we'll take your question at the end there, right after Wenling completes her demo piece. Thanks.
Wenling, you are on mute.
Okay, sorry. Thank you, Ami. Thank you, Alex. I'm sharing my screen now. Can everyone see my screen?
Yeah, we can.
Thank you. Yeah, so Alex has been, presenting a lot of different styles of report and different features in the report, for you. Hopefully, you don't feel too overwhelmed on that. On my part, I want to highlight maybe just one style that Alex didn't cover is what we call dashboard style. So what kind of dashboard style report look like is mainly focused on the operational users where they want to see a lot of information in one view, right? In terms of pertaining to their business roles. We're going to use a procurement overview dashboard to show you how that could look like. And, you will learn that in this kind of dashboard reports, a lot of the live KPIs are presented from the system. So the users don't have to dig into, the different areas inside the system to look for information. The SAP already present those KPI for you, so you can, get your visualized insight into the numbers immediately when you open these dashboards. And you can, of course, drill down on this report so you can see the details of what's coming, to formulate that KPI numbers. And then you can also take actions from this type of report as well. Another type of report that I plan to show you, it is similar to the dashboard that I showed you earlier. This is an agile layout where you can see, this multiple reports within the same screen, but you'll be able to filters along your way on the data, how to present it. And of course, you can take actions on this type of screen as well. So without further ado, let me share my screen in S4 to show you what that looks like. So this is an example of a dashboard overview for that procurement overview. As a user, when you log in here, you see, like Alex mentioned, there's a lot of future option on the top allow you to decide how you want to run these reports on the futures. And then once you apply the future, all the sub-report that you see underneath that will be applied automatically with that future. So thinking about if you want to know the purchasing situation for this particular location, you would change the purchasing organization on the top and hit go. Then all these data refresh with that particular purchasing organization. And of course, this data, you can see some of them presenting in different way. It has table format, it has these bar charts or, dot chart or pipe chart format. You can change the presentation in the system to however way you want, and then you can change the filters on each of the report as well so that you can see the different data elements. If we look at this report for monitor purchase order views, this is one of the report that a buyer probably want to rely on most because they want to know where is my item, when are they coming in. So if you drill down into this dashboard, then it takes you to the next screen where the buyer can get more insight on the details of all these purchase order items. They can see them, of course, by the futures on the top, by the different purchase order items, by material groups. They can also change the view by not only material group, but maybe also by supplier. So they come in here to choose view by supplier, then they will be able to see them in a combination of by supplier, by material group, how are they, outstanding. They have the option to use these settings to change the data, how it presents. If you just want to see this by supplier, not by material group, you remove the material group categories and just leave the supplier on, and then you hit OK. Then the data will be presented in a different way, just filtered it by supplier. And of course, you see you can change it to the table format or other, bar chart or column chart or line chart, etc. Now, once you, narrow down this, you'll be able to see that the data in the bottom section, it actually reflects what you see on the top. For example, if I just highlight, the POs for this supplier, US domestic number 1, for the items for this particular group, I see all the items down here get refreshed for this particular value. So this is all the items that is open for this supplier for this material group. I can see the item number, the descriptions, the due date of the item in the order, the quantities, if you scroll to the right, the amounts, and the order status. Now this cog wheel, which is a setting screen, allow you to add more data element onto the report, which is like Alex showed you. This is also available in this type of operational dashboard reports. The good thing about this report is you can actually take actions here because you see the schedule lines, delivery dates on the orders, but how about, predicted delivery date? Because we know that oftentimes supplier, might do good job following their promised times on delivering the goods for you, but sometimes they don't. So the system has a machine learning mechanism in the back end where they keep tracking of how the supplier delivered the goods for you, and over time it tracks whether the supplier, delivers good on time for you, and then it can help you predict this delivery date. So you see, if I run this particular item for predict delivery days, it says, ideally the supplier could deliver this item 9 days early for you, because this is my demo system. I don't have anything posted yet for this item, but if everything, work in real life, you can see that, as a buyer, they can easily see, the due dates for each item on this report, and they can also tell, using this predict delivery days technologies, they can tell whether the supplier can deliver this item early or late so that they can make plannings decisions quicker. And of course, on this report, all these blue links is a hyperlink. If you mouse over them, it can take you to all different areas related to the report. You can dig into the purchase order details. You can run this to see, the post goods received for this PO directly from the screen, or you can run this by, changing the purchase order. If you want to change the order amounts, quantities, etc., you can access those actions from this report. So yeah, to summarize this type of report, you can easily see that, it gives you the nice overview of the situation, and it also provide you with options to actions to those, exceptionals that you see on the report. Okay, so this is an example for the purchasing overview side. Let's take another look at the sales orders scenario. So this is another report that I plan to show you how that looks like on the sales order side. Of course, this is not the only one that we have available out of this box. This is one of my favorite reports for tracking sales order fulfillment issues. This report presents a little bit different than the previous one because you see these mini tiles showing on the top section here that illustrate the order fulfillment issues by, issue categories, by sales organization, by social parties, or by total by the weights of the requested delivery date. For any of these data, if you, click on it, the system actually filters this mini tab based on the data element that you filter, because I just filtered this as a customer Fuji Industry. I want to see all the orders that have fulfillment issues for Fuji Industry. So I just click on this, tile here easily. I can see all these numbers get reflected by the number that Fuji Industry has. And if I hit go, the rest of the report already, refreshed with all the Fuji Industries report data as well. So I can easily work on the order exceptions for Fuji Industry in the same screen. I can see here on the second dashboard, this illustrates all the issues with different, issue status. If I want to see what are the issues with the orders that is under delivery block, I will highlight this delivery block category. Then my bottom section will filter this report down to all the orders that has currently in delivery block. And then I can review the detail to see, when is the day that it needs to take action, what is the order information, including order number. If you want to add more data into the screen, you use these cog wheels to add these other data elements onto the screen. And of course, you can easily take actions here that if you want to remove the delivery block for these two orders, because we know that we have enough inventory for the item, then you can select them and you can click this remove a delivery block immediately from the screen. And then these two orders will be removed from the delivery block, and then they will be able to fulfill for the next stage. So yeah, this is a very similar, concept as what the purchase order overview looks like, but it's just a different format. Like you can run this report in the agile style that you can filter the data step by step to, help you navigate to the details that you can take action on. I know it's almost time, so we have 5 minutes left. This is a quick report presentation I want to illustrate for you for the sales order side. Do you have any questions from the team? If not, I will hand this back to you, Ami, and then we can take some Q&As.
Yeah, for sure. So Max has been waiting patiently, so I'd like to give Max an opportunity to pose his question first. And then there is one question posted as well in the Q&A. I see Alex has responded, but if we have some time, maybe we can just address that verbally as well. So Max, yeah, please pose your question.
I just mute. Okay, sorry. Yeah, the question related to the profit center. I'm talking about the consulting part of the business in CCI, engineering consulting, whatever, So the profit center, my question is, I want to know when you run, let's say, for instance, you run income statement by profit center, but profit center A, which is kind of equivalent to our division engineer, let's say, for example, owns the contracts with the client, owns the project, because we are project-based consulting company for the consulting side, owns the contracts, owns the project, but I just exaggerate profit center B, let's say pipeline facility division, works for the job, did all the job. So how the income statement, the revenue, booked to profit center A, who owns the project, and allocated to profit center B, who provide the resource. Is that something we can have some clarity on this today, or maybe, maybe?
Yeah, I mean, I think a couple things I can tell you quickly. So the profit center has a complex sort of set of derivation rules that you would need to build. So how is the profit center being derived? Every journal entry can only have one profit center. A profit center can belong to a single company or it can be shared. So those are all kind of true statements. But you can't, if you want to start doing sort of, revenue sharing or cost sharing across profit centers, then you get into potentially some sort of month-end allocation scenario. So it's a bit of a complicated question. We would have to kind of sit down and look at this kind of from an architectural thing to understand how to get you the reporting solution you need. So yeah, I think that's something we'd have to address kind of at a deeper dive.
So is there anything, let's say we heard from Jimmy Shad, which is a VistaVu team, he said there's a original profit center, which means who owns the resource. So then my question is that a capability we can just run, let's say, for instance, income statement based on the original profit center, which is resource plan provider, instead of a profit center. Is that a terminology in SAP, original profit center there?
I don't know if the semantics are the same, but in a way, if I'm understanding your question, it's possible because when you do allocations, you can have a decision whether you're preserving those original entries in either a specific group of accounts or potentially profit centers. So you can have things kind of eliminate but maintain their original status. So once again, that's kind of a deeper design discussion. So I can't make any promises until we sort of unpacked what the requirement is. So we might not call it original profit center, but if I understand what you're getting at, I think it's possible to achieve that. So I'd have to kind of know more details.
So basically, this is how we set up in SAP.
That's correct. And then what processes you're running at the end of the month. And for the example that I was showing today, it was a very simple example. Like I'm saying there is maybe you have two legal entities and both those legal entities do consulting. And you want to just sort of say, well, It doesn't matter which company it is. The common profit center is a common profit center. So depending who owns the customer in that example, so that's a very simple scenario I gave. It sounds to me like, Max, you're looking for something a bit more complex, so we would need to understand it more.
Yeah,
depth.
that actually is another level, intercompany we called. We need to understand that as well.
Yeah.
Because we're reporting under each kind of, currently the divisional level, which is, is going to be equivalent as a profit center level. See how it works, how performance look like. So is that something maybe I want to follow up with the implementing group?
Yeah, that's for sure. And I think, sorry, you said you're with CCI, is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think I've actually talked to some of the team about some reporting questions. So yeah, we can have a meeting. So we'll take that offline.
Thanks.
Thanks.
And there are a couple more questions from the team here. I just pulled over Larry's question from the chat. So there's two more. One from Jim, from Perez. Just to confirm, the reports shown today are standard and not from SAC?
That's correct. SAC is another product, and we did not even touch on that.
Thank you. And then the last question from the main screen, how do you access these different reports and tables?
Yeah, you would know. So sorry, go ahead, Wenling.
Yeah, I think I answered that one. These reports are available in each business functions profile spaces. So if you're a buyer, then you have your buyer's business role there. And then if you click on that buyer business roles profile spaces, you will see those reports there. If you're a finance user, you should be able to see those spaces as well. But worst case, you can add those reports into your home landing page in the shortcut into your favorite so that you can see them, pop up when you log into the system right away.
They are sort of spread out. So sometimes we have to do a bit of a report rationalization process as part of the projects to help you understand where to go to find things. Was there another question, Ami?
Nope, that's it for now. I'm sure folks have more questions, but unfortunately we run out of time for today. I do want to conclude the session actually today with just a mention of an upcoming session that I feel might be of interest to the folks on the call. So later this week we have an advanced data session where we talk about analytics and AI with our analytics partner Simplify. This session will be hosted by Nick Butter from our team. So in this session, we'll walk through SAP Analytics Cloud or SAC and how it supports advanced reporting, planning, and insights. And then Business Data Cloud, how that provides the governed reusable data integration across SAP and non-SAP systems where you can centralize all your data to pull more advanced insights off of your overall business data. And finally, how reporting can move from what happened to what should we do next as a business. So look out for that one if you're interested in more advanced topics around this topic of reporting. Again, we thank everybody for joining us on this call today and for all of the very insightful questions. Really appreciate your time and your engagement. If you do have any further questions for us with respect to these topics, you're always welcome to reach out to us offline, whether it be through Alex, Wenling, or myself. So yeah, you know where to find us. Our emails are available. Again, thank you so much for everybody's time, and we hope you have a great rest of your afternoon. Thank you.